stop. If you are a Path of Exile 1 veteran and you have a Path of Exile 1 content creator bank that you've been watching, you will find nothing new in this video. I'm going to basically be breaking down the passive skill tree for new players so they can understand or break down that barrier entry for them coming in. And I don't want to waste any of your time, and I want to be honest up front. But Path of Exile 2 is launching on December 6th. And with that, a whole bunch of content is coming. But a lot of new players are really worried about one thing, and it is the passive skill tree. Everyone knows the trope of needing a PhD to play Path of Exile 1, and that has been the big holdup for Path of Exile 2 potential or new players. So in this video today, I want to discuss what the passive tree is like for Path of Exile 2, 1, and how it differs coming into Path of Exile 2. In my typical fashion of upfronting the knowledge in my video, what I will say is the Path of Exile 2 tree has been streamlined. It's a lot easier to push yourself through it. It has these attribute highways that you can quickly connect from one portion of the tree to the other. A lot of the elements, such as the mastery nodes, have been removed from the game, and pushing through, understanding that there's really only notable, keystone, and jewel nodes are the only things that really exist in the Path of Exile 2 passive tree, makes it far more accessible. And once you really understand how the tree is divided up and that pretty much two classes share one branch, all these things allows you to really get a much better approach to understanding this skill tree. And a big thing I will say is if you jump into the early access, you are brand new, using a build guide is going to be fine. But ultimately, doesn't matter. It's early access. We know that these characters are going to go from early access into launch, but they'll be in their own league outside of everything, outside of standards and outside of ladder play. So screw up, experiment. Who gives a crap? It's an early access. Play and understand and break your character as much as possible so that you can learn what to do on the next one that you want to try. We have a whole bunch of classes, 6 classes at the start of early access and 6 more coming. So while you might be intimidated, you might feel like it's an elitist game, it's filled with a passive tree that's very scary, I encourage you, if you are jumping in on the 6th, to really experiment and really play however the hell you want to get a feel for it. Or follow a build guide, and then after that, go off the rails and break it. So hopefully after this video, you'll have a better understanding of how this skill tree works. But that's the too long didn't watch of this entire video. If that's all you want to know, please feel free to shut the video down and get back to enjoying your hype of Path of Exile 2. But if you are heading out, please don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe, as each one of those things does help me out in a huge way. Lastly, too, I will be streaming this game on Twitch. You can find that linked below. I stream Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Well, let's get started here on the Path of Exile 2 passive skill tree. So to start us off, let's take a look at the Path of Exile 1 passive tree and talk about the things that make it very confusing. And I'm going to do this probably be wrong. I have not played Path of Exile in quite a bit of time, so I apologize, but I will be able to hit this on a high level for you so you can at least understand roughly what's going to be changing and how it's going to change. So for starters, the tree starts in these locations, right here, here, and here. They have whole entirely different start locations, and you have a class that will then dictate where that start is, right? So if I switch back to Templar, it starts over here. If I go to Shadow, it goes over to here. Now, within that, you then have a bunch of different passive nodes. These are just your minor little passive nodes that bring you across the tree until you get to these. These are your, not your keystone, but your, not your mastery, because that's another one as well, your notable passives, which is, again, just some sort of passive that gives you a pretty particular benefit in one direction or another. And we'll go ahead and just click around here till we get to what I'm going to talk about, which is over here. This is a mastery. So basically, you will then get a mastery, which will increase something from this list based off of other parameters, so on and so forth. I'm not going to get too much into it, just want to bring that up. And as you then push forward, you have your keystones, which is this right here, this big, huge gilded one. And again, it is some sort of drastic change to the way the character operates. This one cannot recover energy shield to above armor, 3% of physical damage prevented from hits. Recently is regenerated as energy shield per second. So you have that big one. So you have 4 different nodes that we've talked about, right? Your general passive, your notable, your keystone, your mastery, and then lastly, you have a jewel socket where you're going to socket a jewel into it and it will give you your benefits. For those of you who are coming from Diablo 4, you know that's to be typically associated with the word glyph. It's way different in Path of Exile, but it's the easiest analog I can make for you. So that is the system as it is. And another big portion of the system is going from, let's just say the Templar over here down to whatever this is, whatever, I don't know which one it is, right over here. This is the warrior, I think. You would take these attribute nodes, which is kind of like the highway of what we will have in 2. But what you should know about this is these are set attribute points. This is strength. This is intelligence. This is strength. One of these is going to be dexterity somewhere along the line. Well, maybe not one of these is, but dexterity is another one of them. And the tree itself is divided up, right? It's like, I think like this is strength. This is like intelligence area and this is dexterity, and they all kind of mix together. So it's like, okay, if I'm going to go with intelligence, I'm going to go up here. If I'm going to go with strength, I'm going to go over here. If I'm going to go with dexterity, it's going to be over here. So the entire tree in and of itself is split up in that regard. So if I wanted to be a hypothetical here, and again, I don't know Path of Exile builds and stuff enough to speak to this, but if I wanted to be a strength using character, but I wanted to use more dexterity for whatever reason, I would need to push through the center of the tree to get over to here to get some benefits from dexterity. To just make that as lame and as easy to access as possible. Now, though, of course, there are ascendancy nodes, and there's going into that whole process, but that has to do with build complexity, which I have another another video working on. So that is your Path of Exile 1 passive tree, and those are the different node types of this tree, and it is why it is so confusing. Your masteries and your passives and your keystones, and then using this lane to get from different locations, all this stuff is very weird. But let's take a look at the Path of Exile 2 tree and see how it's both similar but also different. So swapping over to this, we have the Path of Exile 2 passive tree. And I'm using Photoshop to do this because it's going to be the best and easiest way for me to illustrate things, because I am not the best at Premiere or After Effects in editing. So we talked about all the different node types from Path of Exile 1. We had the minor node, we had the notable, we had the keystone, we had the mastery, and then we had the jewel. That's 5 different node types. Here, in this game, it's a little bit different. So first off, let's scroll in here. And let's take a look at some stuff. So for one, as you can see, we have kind of what's set up here. And this is from the Reddit. This is all subject to change. None of this is concrete fact, of course. This is all going to be different once the game goes live. So when we take a look at this, we have, I'm going to put this to like a red real quick. We have a couple nodes to take a look at. We have just your simple minor node that's like right there and right there. Those are your standard minor nodes that we had before. But now we have the notables, which are here, here, here. Any of these like kind of squarish looking gilded borders, those are your notable passives. Notable passives this time around too are a little bit different. They don't respond the same way as PoE 1. It doesn't really matter because I'm just trying to get you to understand this. And then we have our keystones. Keystones look just like they did in the previous one, where it's more of a like gilded circular icon, like this one right there is our keystone, stuff like that. So you can see that's our 3 primary nodes. That's all you really need to worry about. And then we have jewel slots, which are like right here. Jewel slots, they'll socket a jewel into them. They'll give you bonuses. It'll help out with certain things. It's a lot easier to understand. And what you also see is these little clusters are not nearly as dense as the previous tree. The previous tree is a lot more compact, or I'm sorry, not compact. It's a lot denser because there's so much stuff per quote unquote square inch than there is here. A lot of these have a lot of minor nodes that connect you to notable passives that give you bonuses in line with the stuff you want. On top of that too, we have 6 kind of starting locations here. And these 6 starting locations are going to ultimately be dictated upon your starting class. So if you're a ranger or a huntress, you're going to start right here. If you're a warrior or a marauder, you're going to start right here. And those are going to branch out in the directions. You don't have a specific one per class. So you have the same general tree that you're working off of, but you'll work again. If I'm just looking at a ranger and a huntress, you'll kind of work within this location. And Max Roll has a really good picture of this divided like this. You can see that the entire passive tree is divided into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 separate areas. 3 primary things of strength, dexterity, and intelligence. And then all this overlaps into a large Venn diagram. This area up here is intelligence intermixed with either strength on this side or dexterity on this side. And then that kind of reflects down on this region, right? So as we push into our Templar or Druid, we have intelligence and strength. Our strength, pure strength characters are Marauder and Warrior. Strength and Dex, Mercenary and Duelist. Dexterity is Huntress and Ranger. Int and Dex would be Shadow and Monk. And then lastly, that Int would be Sorceress and Witch. So the passive tree is divided up, just like it was before. But it is far easier to navigate these locations. Because remember when we looked at the Path of Exile 1 tree, we had attribute points that were these little attribute points that would bring us from the different locations of the tree. They were locked to specific attribute points. It is not that way this time. Now we have the attribute highway, which is this. It's these big 3 rings here coincide with the pattern that you can see right here. It kind of branches around and connects, branches around and connects, and branches around and connects. Each one of those minor nodes gives you an attribute of your choosing versus a set one. So even if I'm down over here in dexterity and I choose one of these little attribute nodes, I can get intelligence, or maybe I get strength, whatever I want for the build I have in mind. It makes this a lot more approachable because I don't need to think so hard about the specific things I'm choosing. Another thing too is to respec any node that you've selected, you just simply spend some gold to do so. In Path of Exile 1, you need a specific resource. It's like the Orb of Reflection or whatever. So you could actually end up completely tanking your character because you chose a node that would give you a keystone. The keystone completely breaks your character and you can't respec because you don't have the resource to do it. This time around, you just simply spend some points, you respec, you're good to go. So this kind of then breaks out. We looked at this highway, right? Well, this highway then takes a look at this. This is the kind of breakout of how the passive tree works. Everything in this center area right here is general passive skills that even if you are, say, a Huntress over here and you want to go into step over here and for a Templar, it's at least going to be somewhat beneficial generally across the character. Then you start to focus towards specific notable passives or maybe keystones that create a very focused style of play in this center ring, this yellow ring here. And then as you push out into this red ring, you're now are specialized. You are now in the passives that are going to put you in a very specialized focus for the character. So if I'm going to kind of look at trajectory for a ranger, and maybe I'm going to say, oh, you know what, I'm going to use a lot of poison abilities. Okay, well, I'm now in the poison section. I'm generic location. I have no idea where poison section is. Well, now I want to use poison shots with my bow and arrow, and I'm assuming that's this because it looks like a bow and arrow. I'm going to go here. So that kind of dictates the path that I go. You can be anything you want in this because your class isn't so important to your capabilities because your skills are not bound to the class. They're bound to the weapons. What is important from your class are where you start on this passive tree and what your ascendancies are. That is it. That's the only thing that really matters. The rest is just whatever weapons and skills you want to use on whatever character you want to use them. So now that we've done all this, how does this really make it a lot easier to approach? Well, let's take a look. We've zoomed back in. Let's assume that we started as a ranger, and I want to focus on the capabilities of a hypothetical Templar or Druid, which is over here in this location, right? Well, I can take these minor nodes going all the way around, all these little blips in red, and it's going to bring me up towards whatever this is up here with Templar/Druid. So I can then leverage into any of those passive abilities along the way, the notable passives. And remember, everything in this tight center is general, right? So I know that anything I'm picking up here is not going to really throw my character off. We're going to get, well, in Path of Exile 1, we had 123 passives to choose from. You get passive skill points from leveling up, doing quests, what have you. I don't know the max number here, but if I were to simply choose only these red blips, it's 28 red blips. So assuming I didn't get any passive skill points from quests or what have you, that's only 28 levels out of 100 levels. So that's only a quarter of our total investment as a character. It's not that heavy of an investment to get over to this direction. It's far easier and a lot more concise to do so, where we're going to pick up a lot of notable passives that maybe we don't use, maybe we do use, who knows what they are. There's no way to tell right now. Everything we know right now is pretty much hugely conjecture. But, okay, we've gone over here. Well, maybe I didn't want to focus so hard. Well, okay, I can go this route instead. This is another one on our highway, right? This pushes us through that ring, that every single one of these nodes is an attribute highway node, meaning that every time I select it, it's just going to give me raw attribute points, either 10 dexterity, 10 strength, or 10 intelligence, however I want to spread it. So maybe I want to be a ranger that specializes in Templar abilities, and I want to use both strength and dexterity. Well, now, compared to Path of Exile 1, where maybe I'm going to take an attribute point that I don't want, well, and I'm recording this live on stream. Someone said that it's no longer 10, it's 5. So this is 5 attribute points. Well, now I can focus on strength and dexterity because I'm going to get all the strength and dexterity I want from each one of these blue nodes, and it's 27 versus the 28 of all of these red nodes. You can see it's a lot easier to move through this tree. And I think when you take a look at this tree from this angle, it can make you want to vomit because you're like, dude, what the hell do you expect me to do with this many little blips? But when you really kind of break it down to a bite size, if you've played any game recently, this isn't too foreign of a construct for a talent tree. If you played World of Warcraft, the most recent DLC, it looks just like this. If you've played Diablo 4 and you've dealt with a glyph board, it's not too far off. If you've played the survival game Enshrouded, it looks just like this. So I know it's very confusing. And for me, I was like, I don't know if I really want to learn this to explain people. I'm not smart. It took me about 1 or 2 articles of understanding to go, oh, it's actually a lot simpler. They're taking 10 years of development, cramming it into a brand new system, or at least not even a brand new system, but a revamped, updated system that is far easier to approach. And hopefully now you can see that it's a lot easier to take a look at once you break down how this is split apart. So how does this work for our weapon sets? So we've seen these 2 branches that I've created, right? Our red and our blue. Well, weapon sets now help to add to this. Let's assume that our total amount of passive skill points is 100 that you get as a player. Well, now in Path of Exile 2, weapon sets are crucial because weapons are what give us our skills. And those weapons, maybe they are focused on elemental, or maybe it's a quarterstaff because you're playing a monk. And I, as a monk, want to leverage lightning abilities or frozen abilities, or maybe I'm a ranger, I'm using poison abilities or physical abilities, whatever it is. Every weapon set gives you 20 extra passive skill points that are bound solely to that weapon set. What I mean by that is, let's look over here at this section. I'm going to say weapon set A, I've chosen these additional passive skill points to put in. You'll get these passive skill points as a quest reward that you then invest solely attached to that weapon set. So I know now we've got a ton of colors going on here. Let me make it a little bit easier for you and turn off this red. These are the only passive skill points we've invested in the blue. So green is our weapon set 2. Well, you know what? I picked up another weapon and I'm going to focus on one element of damage, hypothetical fire, and another element of damage, hypothetical ice. So now if I switch to weapon set 2, I'm going to have these passives and these will be shut off when weapon set 2 is active. What's important to note though is that any skill that you choose that chooses a specific weapon will be instantaneous, meaning that if I'm using a sword, I press a button. Okay, well, that sword's going to use weapon set 2. And then I press another button and it jumps back to my bow and arrow. That's going to use weapon set 1. Whatever I have it set to, right? It'll instantaneously use these as needed as per the skill that is appropriate to it. So these are all my 1 for weapon set 1. These are my ones for weapon set 2. And they'll jump across as needed for the skill that it coincides. So this gives you flexibility within your build to have you say, okay, I'm pushing through this entire tree where I have all this active. But I want to take advantage of all these things over here because this is what gives me that weapon's additional capabilities, additional strength, additional bonuses, whatever it is. So I think that it's really hard to understand at first blush. But once you really kind of put it through its paces, and I think the hardest thing for anyone to understand right now, if you're coming to this brand new, is that you have no context on how this actually applies to the video game. You've only heard exciting things from people that are Path of Exile content creators or people that are maybe put some time into it to learn it. So you're like, okay, well, I don't understand it because you don't have practical knowledge of the game, how it actually applies to it. So really just think of it basically as, if you want to use a Diablo analog, think of it like you're playing a necromancer in Diablo. And if you want to use maybe a barbarian's war cry, you're tapping into that ability very quickly and using the skill points from that barbarian while still playing a necromancer. I know that's still a convoluted example, but basically you're quickly popping into a set of passives that you've created for yourself to quickly turn those passives on and off. So at that, though, it brings our video here to a close. I wanted to break down this passive tree because it's the thing that is holding the most people up on the game. I myself, too, when playing Path of Exile 1, I'm like, I did a Vampire Blender build. That, for those OGs that played it like way back in like 2013, 14, that was a pretty good build back then. And I didn't make the build. I looked the build up online because I didn't understand it. After delving through it a little bit more, it's a little bit easier for me to understand, but I think Path of Exile 2's build is just going to be so much more accessible because they've said, we want builds to be viable all the way through the game. And yeah, there's the possibility to go very try hard and get a really good sweaty build by going really hard in the paint in certain directions and doing certain things. That's always going to exist in action RPGs, hack and slash, in video games as a whole. But don't defeat yourself from trying this game out or being interested in this game because this tree scares you so much. This tree is a lot more accessible than it's ever been. And just by simply kind of looking at it, we don't know what the in-game kind of tutorial is to break this down to new players. It might be way better explained than I'm about to right now. And me not being able to use an in-game format or UI to show it and using Photoshop is janky as fuck. But still, hopefully this breaks down that barrier of entry. And if you're a veteran of the good fight, you've been playing this game for ages, go ahead and share some of your information. Say, hey, you know what he said was right, but here's the things that are different. Here's the things that maybe help you out a little bit better. Hearing the same thing from a different angle is what really allows you to click with information more so than most. Hearing, hey, you know what? It's like this. You might not vibe with that explanation. Having someone else explain to you a different way is really going to help. So take a look at all the other Path of Exile content creators out there. There's tons of them, and they all have probably a more accurate take on this because they've been, dyed in the wool on this for the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. This game has been out for a chunk of time. But I promise once you really get through this, you'll see how much fun there is linked to the complexity of the builds in this without them being too over your head. In the next video, we're going to discuss build complexity, how it pertains to the weapons and the skill gems and then the support gems, and how it's going to be a really cool process to make a character that is truly up to you, right? You are making a character based off of a class. The only thing that's going to matter, like I said, is where you start on here and then what your ascendancy classes are going to be, because those ascendancy classes are going to be that true flavor to what you're going to be doing. But if you have any comments or anything you want to add to it, let it be known in the comment section below. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.